Good morning. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and a ton of tips to help y'all on your fitness journey. I think I'm just going to stop saying that. I'm going to be honest. I feel like y'all know that by now, unless you're a brand new listener, which if you are, hopefully you'll get some value out of this episode. Let's go ahead and go over to Instagram, get myself live there. Sipping on my coffee. I think I'm live. It's always hard to tell on Instagram lately. It's been hard for me to tell if I'm actually live or not. If y'all, you know what I should just do is use my phone. Oh, there we go. Yes. Good morning, Holly. Good morning, Mahia. I like that name. P. Larson. Good morning. Who's on YouTube? Anybody on YouTube or Facebook? Not yet. All right. Today, guys, I have a fun episode. Well, not really a fun episode, but hopefully an episode or a topic that will be helpful for those of you guys. I'm going to be talking about carbs versus fats. So if you're listening to this right now and you have questions or thoughts about the carbs versus the fats debate and which one you eat or don't eat, I would love to know what thoughts you might have about this. So feel free to shoot them up in the comments for me to be reading over. But I'm going to kind of jump right into it. And what really got me thinking about this topic is there's just so much out there. And it's so easy for people to go down the rabbit hole of this person said I shouldn't be eating carbs, or this person says that spiking my blood sugar is bad. And I need to be eating more fats to be more insulin sensitive, or, my body needs to be eating more fat to burn fat. Like all of this stuff that is out there. And I want to break it down in the most simple way for you guys to understand exactly where these little claims can come in and have some truth to them, but to understand what matters most for you. Because at the end of the day, all of the knowledge that you can have in the world doesn't matter if it does not apply to you. And I know this firsthand because that was me at one point in my life. I was applying the wrong nutrition tactics to me. I didn't need the things that I was doing. And now that I have simplified things, I feel great. Life is good. And I have a much more balanced diet and a much more enjoyable diet because I am a very driven individual. And if you tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. Good morning, Melissa. So if you guys have any questions about this topic, please feel free to throw them in the comments for me. I'm going to roll right into it. So first and foremost, let me get to my notes again. Again, if you guys put a question up as I'm going through these things, I will get to your question. You might have to stay on live long enough to watch the end because I usually don't go back to them until I kind of get through things, but I will kind of periodically check in and see. All right. So are carbs the enemy for your body fat percentage, your body composition, for your hormones, for your metabolism? Today, I really want you guys to understand the difference between carbs and fats, the different types of carbs and fats, and how your body actually uses both, and why eating carbohydrates might actually be what's missing from your diet, especially if you are somebody who is active in the gym. If you like to go to the gym, you like to push yourself hard, whether it's, resistance training, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's Orange Theory, whatever it is, you might be doing yourself a disservice by limiting your carbohydrates. And maybe you're also very active in your day, like you're just forever on the go. You're always doing things. You might also benefit from eating more carbs. And maybe that's scary to you because you've kind of been told that carbs are the enemy, or vice versa. Maybe you are super fat phobic. That was me for a long time. Adding peanut butter back into my diet and feeling like I could actually have an amount and not feel like it was going to cause me to eat the whole jar or wasn't going to instantly put fat on my body was something that took me years to undo. So I want to go over both. And I'm going to start with carbs, which are the miracle drug of the 25th century. I should have rethought that. Of 2025. They're the miracle drug of 2025. Okay, all the drugs out there, carbs are your best friend. Okay. What are carbs? Carbs are essentially foods like fruits, vegetables are carbs, your starchy vegetables. They contain sugar, starches, and fiber, okay? And there are different types of carbohydrates. We've got simple carbohydrates and we've got more complex carbohydrates. I want you to think we've got minimally processed. We also have highly processed carbohydrates. And their main role in your body is going to be for energy. It's how our body, obviously it fuels our brain and it fuels our muscles. That's how our body's preferred energy source. We need carbohydrates in order to feel good in our day. I know that there are people out there who are like, but carbohydrates are not essential because your body can make carbohydrates through like glucogenesis and convert ketosis and all this stuff. Okay, yes, your body is designed to, in those situations of like famine and starvation, to find a way to survive. Okay, but is your goal in life to just survive, like to constantly be living your life on operating at like 50% capacity? Or do you want to thrive in life and feel good? I think you want to thrive in life and feel good, but you're being told that carbohydrates are also making you fat and making you like insulin resistant and all of these things. And I'm going to be talking about that. Now, carbs, fats, and proteins. I did a deep dive on protein a couple weeks ago. All have different calorie amounts per gram. Okay, so 1 gram of protein has 4 calories. 1 gram of carbs also has 4 calories. And 1 gram of fat has 9 calories. And everybody has an amount of calories that their body needs to maintain their body composition, body weight. And if going over that, you're going to end up being in a calorie surplus and gain body weight or body fat. And if you go under that, you'll be in a calorie deficit over time and you'll lose weight. So it's important for you guys to understand that the calories are the biggest thing that are going to factor into your weight. But carbs versus fats do have different effects on your metabolic rate and on honestly everything. So I'm going to go over all that stuff today. One thing that I do want to mention, because I think that a lot of people get super freaked out by this, is when you switch from a moderate or a higher carb diet to a lower fat diet or lower carb diet, you'll usually see that your weight drops a little bit. And people associate with this with weight loss. They're thinking that they're getting leaner. Vice versa, if you increase your carbohydrate intake, you're like, oh my gosh, the scale's up 1 or 2 pounds. And that can be felt like you might feel like you've gained body fat, but that's not fat. In fact, I'm going to talk about that. All right. So that is typically glycogen. So whenever we take in carbohydrates, those carbohydrates get broken down into glucose and they get stored in your muscles as glycogen and also in your liver as glycogen. That's where carbohydrates get stored. Every single person has a different amount of glycogen storage that they have potential for. You guys have a lot higher glycogen potential than you realize. Okay, so I know people that are afraid to eat over 200 carbs a day, and that's not a lot of carbs. As someone that eats over 500 carbs a day, I know that. But at one point, I was like that too. I was really afraid of it because I was hyper-focused on the scale. Now, over time, if I'm eating in a calorie surplus, if I'm eating too many calories, whether they're from carbs or fats, I will put on body fat. Okay, just it's inevitable. But what's important for you to note is that carbs, as I mentioned, are stored as glycogen first and foremost. So your body is more likely to burn through carbs than it is as fat. And I'll talk about the fat component later on in this episode. Okay, so what you need to understand is carbs are essential for energy. You're going to feel better. They're going to obviously store your muscles with glycogen or fill your muscles with glycogen, and can sometimes cause a little bit of water weight retention when you first increase them if you've never eaten more carbohydrates before. It's normal. It's not body fat. Okay. Let's talk about simple versus complex carbs, because I'm going to talk about this more so because I think that when people hear carbs, they don't realize that there are types of carbs that have different nutrients in them and are going to have a different impact on your blood sugar and on your overall health. Okay. So simple carbs, these are things like table sugar, honey, fruit juice, candy without any fat in it, white bread, white pastas, sports drinks. These are very simple carbohydrates. A lot of a lot of athletes will use these in their training because it's a rapid source of energy. So when they're bonking in a training session, if they take in some honey or some sugar, they're going to feel instantly better. Their body's going to be getting a little bit of a flush of sugar, and it's going to be helpful for their training. They're very fast digested. That's why they're used around then. They also tend to spike your blood sugar quickly. Now, the best uses for these types of carbohydrates, because they do have use in your diet, is going to be pre and post workout training because they can be quick energy sources. You wouldn't ideally want to be consuming these things just throughout the day normally because they aren't going to typically sit very well in your stomach. They're probably going to cause some blood sugar spikes and crashes, which might get you to have more cravings. They're not going to make you feel very full, which can lead to overeating. And they're lacking a lot of the nutrients that your body needs from the carbohydrates that your body is looking for, which is where complex carbohydrates come in. These are going to be things like oats, sweet potatoes, brown rice, lentils, beans, quinoa. Whole grains such as whole grain bread. Oh my gosh, I said the word bread. Wraps, vegetables, fruits, things like that. These have more fiber, more micronutrients, and they're going to have a little bit of a lower impact on your blood sugar. They're going to keep your blood sugar a little bit more regulated, a little bit more stable, more steady energy. So the majority of your meals should be made up of more complex carbohydrates. Now, at the end of the day, every once in a while, having a little bit of sugar just because you want it isn't going to be a big deal. Blood sugar spikes aren't necessarily a bad thing. So I want to go over what people think, right? So people think that spikes in your blood sugar cause fat gain, or they lead to insulin resistance, or they make you all of a sudden just start storing too much sugar. It's just bad for your body. But here's the biggest thing that you guys have to understand. This is only partially true. Over time, blood sugar spikes and crashes can become problematic. If your entire day is filled with a ton of highly processed carbohydrates, little fiber or protein, and no activity, then yes, your body is going to be putting under a lot of stress trying to process those things. If you are also taking in more calories than your body needs to consume to maintain your body weight. But you're not going to have that if you're having like an apple or whole grain bread or oats or things like that. Now, the other thing to note is that active people tend to be able to handle blood sugar spikes better. Typically, what we see is hyperresponse when people have a blood sugar spike and they're more active. They tend to move more when they have a blood sugar spike. They get that little boost of energy. They're like, oh, they're like kind of like, a little bit more alert. Your training improves insulin sensitivity if you're given more sugar around those when you're getting a blood sugar spike around your training. So a spike after a meal or around workouts is fuel going where you need it to. So it's important to note that a blood sugar spike isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's really overall calorie intake over time and making sure that your movement and your intake are equaling out to a net equal rather than a positive. That's going to get you keeping your blood sugar regulated, keeping your body fat percentage where you want it or your body composition where you want it. So, and here's two things I wrote down. You can have perfect blood sugar control and still gain fat. Okay. So not every fat person has bad blood sugar. You can have perfectly balanced blood sugar and still gain weight. It's just the way it is because a calorie surplus is still a calorie surplus. Vice versa, you can spike insulin every single day and eat carbs freely and still lose fat if you are in a calorie deficit. Plain and simple. Like that is the truth of science and how your body works. If you're in a calorie surplus, it don't matter how regulated your blood sugar is, you're not going to be able to lose weight. You're going to gain weight. And if you spike your blood sugar, but you keep yourself in a deficit, you're still going to lose weight. Now, as I mentioned, spiking your blood sugar too much will cause changes in appetite and might lead to more cravings, which will actually intentionally or eventually maybe lead you to start eating in a calorie surplus. Okay, so just some important things for you guys to notice. So I'm just going to kind of go over to Instagram, see if I have any questions so far. No questions so far. So guys, if you guys have questions, please let me know. Oh, I have a lot of people on YouTube. Jan Clark says, I think most Americans are under eating. So here's the thing is most Americans are undernourished and overfed. Okay. Eating. We're going to talk about that later on this episode. Most Americans are undernourished and overfed. Okay. So, Heidi has a good question. I will touch on that one, Heidi, later on in this episode. All right. So let me get back to this. Okay. All right. So let's talk about fats now, because I don't want to get too far on one end without going into the other. And I want to make sure I get everything covered for you guys. Okay. There are three main types of fats. I'm not going to kind of go into all of them. We've got saturated, unsaturated, we've got trans fats. All right. So our fats, our dietary fats, different from body fats, are essential for hormone function, brain, cell membranes, and also for some fat-soluble vitamin absorption. So like vitamin A, D, E, and K need fat in order to be absorbed in your body. I already mentioned this, but fats have 9 calories per gram. So unlike carbs, which are only 4 calories per gram, fats have 9 calories per gram. So when we're talking about body composition, losing fat, gaining weight, we have to look at the difference between carbs and fats. And I want to make sure I make that clear to you guys right now. If I have 50 grams of carbs, I have only had 200 calories. If I have 50 grams of fat, that is 450 calories. Oh, let me do some math. I should have probably rethought that. Let me see. 9 times 50. I was spot on. I'm a good math student. Okay, 450 calories, right? That's over 2 times as calorie dense as carbs. So this is where people run into a problem. We'll talk about that. Fats are also not your body's ideal fueling source for high intensity training. They're necessary for overall health, but are not designed to be a energy source. They were never designed for your body to run on fat. That is not what your body was designed to do. Okay. Glycogen, glucose, is your body's preferred source of energy. Okay. Fats have a role in your diet, but their role is not to fuel your training. Okay. So that's what I want to make clear right now. It doesn't mean you cannot still perform decent eating a low carb, higher fat diet, but you're not performing as optimally as you could be. And science says that. Okay. So different types of fats, just to kind of quickly touch on this. It's funny because I feel like so many people have opinions about types of carbs, like this carb is bad, this carb is good, but nobody actually has opinions on the types of fats. And we do need a balance of different types of fats. You've got your monounsaturated fats, which are going to be helpful for anti-inflammation, anti-inflammatory, insulin sensitivity, and heart health. These are things like avocado, almonds, peanuts, nut butters, olive oil, those types of things. You've got your polyunsaturated fatty acids, and this is going to be your omega-3s and your omega-6s. And we're looking at things like fatty fish, chia seeds and flax seeds, walnuts, sunflower seed oil, soybean oil, which are omega-6s. And what's important to note about these is that the common day diet has a very unbalanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. And in my opinion, this is why seed oils are getting such a bad name right now, because they are more omega-6 and people aren't getting enough omega-3s. And I would bet if people just replaced a little bit of the soybean oil, the nut or the sunflower oil and shit like that with some more omega-3s from chia seeds, flax seeds, and fatty fish, they probably would realize that their body would feel a lot better, because those omega-3s are good for anti-inflammation. They help support brain health, joints, and recovery. And too much omega-6s have been known to be a little bit more pro-inflammatory. Okay. And then you've also got saturated fats. Okay. Saturated fats for a long time got the demon, name. Now, there is some truth to too much saturated fat can cause higher levels of cholesterol in some populations. These come from your fattier cuts of meat, butter, coconut oil, and full-fat dairy. You should be consuming saturated fats, but it should not be all of your fats. So for all of the carnivore zealots out there, and those of you guys that are like really pushing these, fatty meats and butter and coconut oil, okay, you should be eating more omega-3s and more polyunsaturated fatty acids and more monounsaturated fatty acids, not getting all of your fats from saturated fats. That is the exact same thing as those of you all that are being picky about the types of carbs you're eating, not getting in enough of the whole grains. Okay, so it's the same thing. We need moderation. And then there's another school of fats that I did write down that primarily are going to be found, and not so much anymore, but they're found in a lot of packaged goods, processed goods, and that's trans fats. So margarine and a lot of baked goods are like the hydrogenated oils. These are becoming less, obviously now people are kind of going to more of the seed oils or other things, but they are a thing, and they can increase bad cholesterol, reduce good cholesterol, and they also do cause some inflammation. So what's important for you guys to know here is that fats are not bad. It's just that you have to understand what the purpose of them for is. And we don't need as much of them as a lot of people think. Most people tend to overshoot how much dietary fat they actually need. And this is why they also see that, I don't know why I'm not losing weight on this low fat or low carb diet. It's because you're getting too much fats. Even healthy fats can put you into a calorie surplus. But social media pushes like, don't be afraid of fat. Add all of these fats. And like, you look at these freaking fat bomb meals, and I'm like, yo, there's like 60 grams of fat in like that bowl of fake oatmeal, that because they could have had the oatmeal, but instead they made some like nut version of it that's just literally laden with calories. Okay. So yes, Healthy fats are naturally not are needed and necessary, but they're very calorie dense. We need much less of them than we realize. Like I mentioned, fat is 9 calories per gram. 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is 100 calories. Okay, that's about, what is that? A little bit less than a serving of oatmeal. Okay, so we have to look at the dosage there. A very small amount. Say 1 tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. 1 avocado can have up to 300 calories, right? So it's important for you guys to look at how the calories can add up very quickly from too much fats. Now, here's the other thing about dietary fats. When we look at energy storage, I already mentioned that carbs get stored in your muscles and your liver as glycogen first. Excess calories eventually that don't get burned off will get stored as body fat. But your dietary fats, do you know where they get stored? In your fat cells as triglycerides. So there is no other place for them to go. They go right to your fat cells, right? Because they're not meant to fuel your body. So over time, if you're in a calorie surplus, those fats will stay in your fat cells. Okay. So again, you need the calorie surplus. That is what matters most. But of the two macronutrients, now that you know where they're stored, which one do you think is more likely to be stored as fats in a surplus? If your body typically burns through carbohydrates for energy, and we use fats for hormonal processes and things like that, which one do you think your body is going to pull off of first? Okay. It's going to burn through the carbs first. The fat's not going to go anywhere. So let's talk about the difference between, hold on one second. I have a different note here I want to make sure I touch on. Okay. So here's the other thing I want to talk about with fats. Before I go into that, I have another, I love talking about this shit. I didn't want to miss this. This is important. That's why I had to stop myself before I got into the next section. I write notes, but then I start to go off on tangents and it's just whatever. So, all right. So here's the deal about fats. Okay. As I already mentioned, I already kind of talked about this. Fats are not meant to be there for fuel. They're meant to fuel hormone production, cell membranes, brain health, help with vitamin absorption. You don't need a whole bunch. Okay. So for the typical 150-pound woman, that might look like 40 to 60 grams per day. Okay. You don't need a dose. You don't need a ton of fat. And the problem is if you are a very active individual, the more fat you eat, the less carbs you can eat because it takes up too many of your calories. For sedentary people, that might be okay because you're not burning through a lot of glycogen. But for people doing CrossFit or lifting regularly, carbs are your main energy source, right? That is where your body, when you're in those states and your muscles are burning, your body is trying to get energy to get your body moving. So you might be underfueling your training by eating too much fat. Like it's like giving your car oil when it needs gas. Like your car needs gas to go somewhere, to point A to point B. It needs oil too, but it needs gas, right? So fat's the oil, carbs are the gas, all right? So that's what I wanted to make sure I talked of. Now I said that, let me go into the main thing, okay? A lot of people in the low carb world believe that by dropping carbs and burning fat for fuel, they associate burning dietary fat for fuel, ketosis, okay, lack of whatever terms you want to use, is burning body fat. The only way your body burns body fat is if you are in a calorie deficit. It doesn't matter if you are in a calorie deficit by restricting carbs or restricting fats. If protein is the same and calories are controlled, okay, you will lose body fat. Burning fat does not mean that you are losing fat. It just means that the type of energy you are burning is no longer a carb source, okay? There is a big difference in burning through body fat and burning fat for fuel. It's kind of like your car burns 2 different types of gasoline, okay? It's still burning gas. It's just, it still has to burn through the same amount of gas to get the gas tank empty. But the type of gas might be different, okay? So you need to understand that because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm fat burning. Okay, well, good for you. Doesn't mean you're going to lose body fat, okay? Doesn't mean anything. In fact, those of you guys that worry about insulin sensitivity are making yourself more insulin resistant by avoiding carbohydrates. because the only way to make yourself more insulin sensitive is to expose yourself to things that spike your insulin and get your body to have a better response from it. Okay, this is all the shit that people don't think about when they follow what so-and-so says. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, this is what matters, okay? All right. What I want you guys to understand is that you need both, okay? You need carbs to fuel your training, for your energy, for your performance, and also because carbs make food taste good. It completes your meal. When you're eating a low carb diet, you finish your meal and you're like, I need something a little sweet. And they'll go to their keto fat bomb treats or whatever, rather than being like, I probably should have just had some carbs with that meal. And maybe I wouldn't have been craving something sweet afterwards. Okay. We also need fats. If you've ever been on a low fat diet and you finish a meal and you're like, man, I'm full, but I'm not satisfied. Like, my stomach feels full, but I feel like I still need something. And you want like a little nut butter, a little dark chocolate. Okay, because your body's looking for the craving. It's getting the craving for the fats that it's missing. You need both, okay, for different reasons. What I want to also talk about, which is I think the biggest problem, is this is not a debate on whether or not you should be eating carbs or fats. There's a missing food group that people are really needing to watch, and it's not anything that I mentioned today. And I call these hyperfoods. I call them crave bombs, okay? It's the calorie-dense combination foods. It's combinations of fats, carbs, sugars, and salts. And they're those hyper palatable foods that like you have a hard time saying no to. It's, I'm really craving a cookie. I want chocolate. I want ice cream. I want potato chips. I want chips and salsa and guacamole. Like, I want those cheesy quesadillas. I want the pasta with the cheese and the meat. And you want the pizza. Like, those are what they called hyperfoods. They're crave bombs. These are things that, these are not carbs. These are not fats. Okay, they are combination foods. In fact, I would have to tell you that most of the calories from these foods are more fat heavy. Most of them have more fat ratio to carbs in these foods. So the real problem in America, as I mentioned before, when I said America is overfed and undernourished, is not getting enough carb sources and fat sources, but getting too many of these hyperfoods that are giving them a bunch of calories with very little nutrition value, okay? And for those of you guys out there that are avoiding carbs because you're trying to lose body fat, or you're afraid of eating carbs, or you freak out when the scale goes up 2 pounds, you're missing out on the benefit of what carbs can do for your body. It will make you leaner. It will make you fitter. It will make you feel better. You'll have better appetite control. Same thing, if you're demonizing fats, like having a little bit of fat might be the best thing you never did for your inflammation markers, for your hormones, for your sleep. But the right types of those foods matters most, okay? So don't fear carbs. They are the fuel for your body, okay? You need to have enough fats in your body to support hormone health, but note that the dosage of fat isn't as high as a lot of people think, okay? So I'm gonna go into those notes now. I wanna really talk about, going back to, Heidi mentioned, what are the thoughts on professional triathletes developing diabetes? So when it comes to blood sugar, people often associate carbs and sugar with the diabetes, okay? And that's not usually the case. Why I think, and this is an opinion, I would need to actually go into some science studies, but I've read some studies, and I'm telling you this right now, full transparency, I would need to pull up some studies for you. But from what I understand from science, okay, blood sugar is not just a food-related problem. Cortisol also spikes your blood sugar. Triathletes train for hours a day. Often, triathletes are also underfed. This leads to a rise in cortisol, which leads to a rise in blood sugar. They become more insulin resistant because they are underfueled. That is usually the main reason why triathletes develop diabetes. Most triathletes that develop diabetes are not overweight. They're usually very lean. They're usually too lean because they have to stay lean for their sport. So most of the time when you see high-end athletes developing things like diabetes or even heart conditions, it is usually from the chronic inflammation that their body is under. Cortisol is being spiked. It's causing a change in blood sugar. In fact, you can develop diabetes from never eating too much sugar. Like, that is a true thing, because it's not just a blood sugar thing. Like, as I mentioned, spiking your blood sugar doesn't necessarily make you insulin resistant or make you diabetic. You can spike your blood sugar every day and be fine, as long as you're burning through those calories. Hopefully that makes sense. To burn fat, you need to be in a calorie. It's that simple. Are we speaking about health or burning fat? Okay. So we're speaking about both. To burn fat, you need to be in a calorie deficit. It's that simple. Are we speaking about health or burning fat? Okay. Well, when we're talking about calorie deficit, we're talking about losing fat. Okay. Eating for health isn't being in a calorie deficit. It's honestly, eating for health is if you're overweight, getting to a healthy weight. But at that point, you should be eating at calorie maintenance, in which case your diet should be balanced and you want to be able to burn through. You should be a healthy individual can utilize carbohydrates the way their body is designed to, meaning when you're moving throughout the day, when you're working out, your body is accessing that stored energy as glycogen to fuel your training. You're not storing fat. You're metabolically in a healthy place. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm not sticking around to listen back to see where it goes. This is good so far. I think that most Americans are not under. Okay, so I actually disagree. I think that most Americans are actually under eating the right types of carbs. Most Americans are not overeating things like whole grain bread or sweet potatoes or even regular potatoes and fruits and pineapple and brown rice and legumes. Okay, most Americans are overeating those crave bombs. Most Americans are eating entirely too much processed food. That's really where people are having the problem in America. Good morning, Bruce. Bruce, not enough protein, too many carbs. Absolutely. Eating for health is not eating sugar, or at least a lot of it. I would say, in my opinion, I agree with what you're saying, Bruce, but I also think that it's important that sugar does not get demonized, meaning it's totally okay. You know, if you eat 14,000 calories over the course of 7 days and 500 of them come from sugar because you want to put a little sugar in your coffee, or you decide that you want to have dessert after dinner, like, that's eating healthy. Okay. It's when that becomes the only thing that you're consuming, or you have to have those things, right? Eating a balanced diet is being able to enjoy having some flexibility, knowing that you're not going to sabotage yourself. Like, having one cookie is not going to be a problem. Having one cookie and then having ice cream, and then the next morning waking up and having a donut, and like, if all of your meals are that way, then yes, like I mentioned, the hyper palatable processed foods is really the big problem. Okay, those crave bombs. Gonna go over to Instagram here. Anybody on Instagram, do you guys have any questions about carbs, fats, or anything that I covered today? Nothing? Nothing to add? I know I kind of went off on some tangents today, but this is the kinds of shit that fires me up, because, at the end of the day, guys, I think about this all the time. All right. I am not a doctor. All right. But I think a lot of you guys look at me like, I don't know. This is where we all have our own imposter syndrome. I feel like in a lot of ways I get looked at like, oh, Cheryl's this like CrossFit girl and she likes to work out and she does nutrition coaching and she helps people lose fat. Guys, I have been studying nutrition since I was 19 years old. This is my passion. And my goal is I want to help you guys understand what really matters most. Like, I don't have any bias towards any specific diet. I believe in learning how to eat for balance and learning how to eat for health. But I know that a component of that is getting my clients to be happy with themselves, because most people, when they embark on a journey to change their nutrition, are doing a bunch of shit because they want to look and feel better. And they're tired of going through this freaking process over and over and not getting anywhere. And a lot of what I have to do is explain to my clients what's going on with their hormones, what's going on, what their food is doing to their body, and how to change things. There's different components of nutrition that I teach. And I think a lot of times it's really hard for me because, I know it's like, I'm going off on a tangent now. I know what all of you guys want. And that's really what I have to show, right? Like, a lot of you guys want to look and feel better. But there's a lot of education that I want to also share with you guys. And this podcast is my opportunity to be able to do that. So whenever you guys, if I'm talking about things and it's like it's resonating with you or you want more of something, please let me know, because that's really what I want to do. If I can help change your life in any way and make you just change one thing in your nutrition or your lifestyle today that's going to improve how you look and feel about yourself, then I am freaking happy. Like, that's what I do on a daily basis. In fact, last week I gave a workshop for free, and I invited all the women that were on that workshop to come into my community for free. Like this, so they're all part of my community for the next 4 weeks. They get to join me on my group calls because I want people to get education. Okay. It's what people need. You don't need to buy any more supplements. You don't need to buy any more programs. Yes, I'm a nutrition coach because I know that people need guidance with applying the things that I teach. I can totally tell you how to do everything, but oftentimes people are going to see what they're supposed to do and they're not going to do it, myself included. Like, I know it works better with accountability. So I also try and make sure that I'm doing what I can to teach you guys the importance of holding yourself accountable if you're not going to hire somebody else to hold yourself accountable to. So any other questions or anything, guys? Good morning, Jeff. What's up, Jeff? Jeff, I've been watching some of your Instagram reels, crushing it in the gym. Some power cleans at 135 I saw, or squat cleans. All right. Well, if you guys didn't already see my story, I am extremely anxious today because I have a long day ahead of me, and I had a long day yesterday because I didn't work on Sunday. So I am going to get back to work. And if you guys have any questions about anything I talked about today, you want me to kind of go further into something, you want to maybe we should do like a little debate, like get into a little, I would love to have some of you guys do a little debate with me, put a little hot seat on. Just feel free to reach out to me. I'm always an open book. Cheryl at myfitbodyrx.com is my email address. I always put the links to where you guys can reach out to me for help with your own nutrition in the show notes. And as always, even if this podcast was messy, because I am just Hot Mess Express Cheryl, please make sure that you like it. If you're on podcasts on Apple or Spotify, give me a review, hit the 5-star, whatever you want to do to help boost my podcast to get out to more people. I would love that because I do love doing this. I do it for free, and that's all I can ask for from you guys. That's pretty much it, guys. Have an amazing Tuesday.